It's time for Tycoons of Small Biz, spotlighting the true backbone of the American economy, the true tycoons of business in America, the owners, founders, and CEOs of small businesses. The show's hosts, Austin Peterson and Landon Mance, are registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors Corporation, a broker dealer, member SIPC, and registered investment advisor. The views expressed by your hosts, Austin and Landon, are not necessarily the views of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Backbone Planning Partners is a marketing name for registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Now let's lean in as Austin and Landon connect with this week's Tycoons.
Good afternoon, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. I am your host here, as always, Austin Peterson. This week, coming to you live from an undisclosed location in Carlsbad, California, where I'm on vacation with my family. Actually, my kids flew home yesterday, went back to school and work, and my wife and I are just here as a couple for the next several days until this weekend. So we're excited to spend some time here. It could be a little bit warmer, but it's very comfortable. We spent some time at the beach yesterday afternoon, and it was fine that it was 66 degrees and sunny. So we'll take that over 97 and blazing hot like it is in Oro Valley, right, Todd?
Yeah.
Yeah. So today, joined by my co-host Gary Braun of Pivotal Advisors, coming to us from Minnesota. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back. And by the way, it's 38 here right now, so I don't want to hear about it. You're complaining at all.
Yeah, well, I was in Salt Lake City last week, and it was 28 degrees and blowing wind just probably 40, 45 miles per hour in about every direction that you could think of at the exact same time, snow coming down. So, trust me, I'm not a stranger to that type of weather. So, but today on the program, so actually before I jump in, so let me tell you, if this is the first time you listened to our program and you're wondering what we do here at Tycoons of Small Biz, we're a small business radio program and podcast that's put together by small business owners for small business owners. We believe that the small business owner in our country is truly the backbone of the American economy. And so in May of 2020, we started this program, and we've gone, essentially every week since. We did our 100th episode last week. So today is 101, Todd. And what we do is we interview a business owner every single week and let them tell us about their business, share some advice, share some of the hardships and really good things that happen inside of a business, and give them an opportunity to, basically just share their story or give them a platform to share their story. So with that, we definitely have a tycoon of small biz on the program with us today. You're going to learn about Todd and his, what I would call very unique background in terms of what he does. But Todd Jarvis is the attorney and firm owner of Jarvis Legacy. It's a law firm out of Oro Valley, Arizona, which is near Tucson, if you're not familiar. So Todd, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much. So glad to be here. Been looking forward to this. So I'm excited to be here and share a little bit about me, a little bit about what I do, and hear a little bit about what you all are doing and up to these days. So thank you.
Yeah, excited to hear your story. So why don't we actually start there? Let's start with your personal background. Tell us where you grew up. Tell us, about your family today. Tell us what you studied in college, which is very unique given what you do for your business today. So why don't we start there and just have you tell us about you personally?
Yeah, fantastic. So I guess when you talk about growing up, I claim Utah. I did high school there. I figured that's where we do our growing up, right, in high school. Had been in Florida and Colorado and other places before that, but did high school in Utah. After that, served a mission for a couple years, and then came home. And actually, one of the guys I worked with on my mission, we became good friends while we were working out there. And he came home. He lived in Provo. I was up in the Sandy area in Salt Lake area. And anyway, so we kept being friends afterwards. He came home from his mission about a month after I did, and we started hanging out with his friends and his older sister, who is now my wife. So that's how Jane and I met. So we, started our family there, and I went to BYU for my undergrad. I studied at BYU. I studied bioinformatics. So it's kind of a marriage of computer science, computer engineering, and molecular biology and genetics and all that, kind of using computers and machine learning to model DNA, model biological processes, and do all the predicting stuff. And it's really interesting stuff. And while I was in undergrad, I was working for a software company there in the Utah Valley, and it's kind of a tech arm of a dental company, service provider, and such. Anyways, we were the tech arm here. We did the back office software for dental offices, right? Practice management, CRM stuff, and some hardware with internal cameras and stuff. And so I was working for them full time while I was going to school at BYU, because my wife and I were starting a family and needed to support them. And so it was in that time at that software company that really learned how much I enjoyed business, how much I enjoyed not just, I guess I found my entrepreneurial spirit there, because I was kind of like an internal entrepreneur in my position there, where I started up a couple new departments and new processes, and really enjoyed that building and creating feeling. So that's where I was like, I want to go out and start businesses and work in the business industry. And then I kind of got a thought, well, if I went to law school and became a business attorney, I could have my hands in all sorts of projects, right? And helping businesses succeed and such. So that's kind of what got me on the trajectory towards law school. Wife and I, we moved down to Tucson area, because that's where I went to law school at University of Arizona. I got my JD there, as well as concurrently with my JD, I worked on and received a master's in genetics, kind of continuing that bioinformatics background. I wanted to be able to, the reason why I stuck to that, even after I decided I want to go to law school in undergrad, why I didn't kind of transfer to like poli-sci or English or history, kind of what you'd expect most from someone who's law school bound. Reason was because I was talking to some career advisors and such, and they're like, if you have a strong science background, it can really kind of open more doors as an attorney. So I kind of stuck to that, and it has. It's opened a lot of doors, especially with working with business owners, being able to speak tech, understand technology, understand software, and even if they're not a tech business or a biologics business, technology is such a big part of business these days. I mean, look at us. We're standing here streaming from 3 different places in the world and talking business, right? And having some understanding of systems and technology and automation, it really helps me kind of guide my business owners in a way that a lot of attorneys can't.
So I got to ask you, Todd.
Yeah.
You're doing, and I had to look it up, bioinformatics. That wasn't a term that was natural to me, so I had to go look that up. You're dealing with DNA and genetics and all that, and one day you're like, I want to be an attorney. I mean, what was the trigger there? I know you said you got the entrepreneurial spirit and all the rest of that, but
sure.
Going from working with DNA and software and systems and everything to being an attorney, that's quite a left turn. So what was the trigger there?
Yeah, so the trigger there was, I loved the science, I loved software, I loved being in there in the technology, but my personality didn't fit the programmer lifestyle and the lab lifestyle. You could even ask my wife. She knew when I was working on a project because I was either home but not home, if you know what I mean. Thinking about it, working on it, and then you hit roadblocks, and it just it was frustrating. And anyway, personality wise, it just didn't fit. And I was using it as a tool, a stepping tool towards the law degree and towards working with business owners. It allowed me to, having that tech background, allowed me to sit for the U.S. Patent Bar exam. So I'm a registered patent attorney. You have to meet certain qualifications and with background and such to be able to sit for that exam and to write patents and such, and understand that. So that's another advantage it kind of gave me too. So
interesting. And then tell us about your family. I cut you off there a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, great. So when we came down to law school, we had 5 kids. So we had started our family already. We were a little ways along there. And then my second year of law school, we had our sixth. And so he's our sixth, I shouldn't say our youngest, because to be continued here. So our sixth
Youngest at the time.
is 11 now, and our oldest is 20. He's currently our two oldest are currently serving missions right now. One's in Minneapolis, one's in the Reno area. And then, but yeah, so a couple years after, our sixth was 7 years old. I was well into my career here, about 7 years in, when our seventh came along. He was a bit of a surprise, but a great thing that happened for us. So kind of hit the reset button, but he's 4 now, and we're having a blast. So we call him our glue, right? He kind of, as a family grows and high school happens, kids start going their way, we all start doing our things, and then he came along and kind of brought everybody, like, Mom and Dad, we need you, we're trying to run our businesses, we're trying to, do all this, and we needed the support for the family. So it's been a really good thing.
So do you still dabble around at all in the DNA and genetic side of things, or are we all about family business law now?
No, definitely. I have clients who are in the pharmaceutical and biologics arena that I work with. So definitely keeping up there, continuing to keep my education kind of going there, and attending, trade shows or seminars and things like that to keep up with it. I have one son who's really interested in molecular biology and that side. So we have a lot of fun talking and helping him move along in that area. So.
And then there's all kinds of law. You said, you got to be a patent attorney and whatnot, which is awesome. That's great. But how did you end up in family business law, which is the primary focus of what your firm does, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we primarily, so what kind of happened is, after law school, got hired on with a local firm, and we had a couple offices, one Phoenix, Tucson, San Diego, and I was kind of working in the business side, kind of working with business owners, doing a lot of that. And my wife and I, we actually had a bit of an experience where over a 3-month period, 3 of our boys were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and one of them, a fourth, was in the hospital for 8 days with pneumonia. So basically what this was doing was kind of teaching us, hey, life can throw curveballs at you at any time. And it kind of made me think personally of what would happen if it had been Jana who had been in a hospital for a week, or me. What would happen to our businesses? What would happen to our income? What would happen? Would we be making medical decisions for each other? And that's what got me interested in the estate planning side and the legacy side of things. Okay, because I needed it for myself. I graduated from law school. I had taken some estates and trust classes, and knew you could take control of some of these contingency issues and these difficult situations. And so I started digging and learning about that, and I learned how much it integrated and dovetailed in with the work I was doing with business owners. We were doing a lot of contingency planning there. We were dealing with, building out operating agreements and buy-sell agreements, and making sure they had good relationships that were well explained, and the expectations between partners were well set to kind of deal with the big what-ifs of business ownership and life. But that extends over to the family, because the business really is an asset, right? Your business is an asset. And you need to view it in that way when it comes to how it relates to your family. To you, it might be a hobby as well, a passion, a love, and a service that you're providing to your community. But to your spouse and your kids, it's their food on the table, it's their income, right? And so viewing it that way kind of makes you really think, well, I need to make sure that this business keeps providing for my family if I'm not there, either temporarily or permanently. And how's that going to happen? And how smoothly is that transition going to go? What is the experience my wife is, or your spouse, your husband, your partner, what is that experience they're going to have when something happens to you? And also the kids, right? If something happens to both
Sure.
you and your spouse, what's that experience the kids are going to have immediately and then long term? So that's really got me getting into that, and really bringing that part of of planning into my practice with business owners. Yeah, so kind of the business owner who got into estate planning and legacy planning rather than the estate planning attorney who decided they need to know a little bit about business, right? It's kind of a different angle. But.
Yeah, very, very personal background and purpose behind what you're doing there. So give us an overview of a little bit about the firm itself. What are the areas that you work on?
Okay, great. Yeah. So basically, when I started my firm, when I worked for the firm before that I mentioned, I worked for one firm for about 7 years, and I transitioned out to start this firm. When I was working there, I did multiple things. They were one of the partners there was very advanced in real estate and commercial real estate, so I did a lot of work there. Some real estate, litigation, business, commercial litigation. I started practicing kind of when the heat of 2008's recession was still in place. So we're doing a lot of foreclosure mitigation, bankruptcies, things like that, right? So it's kind of working all these different areas in people's lives while building the business owner side of the practice. And so having experienced that kind of gave me a good foundation. Plus it helped me know what I like to do and what I don't like to do, right? So when I transitioned out of the firm, about over a year, it was with the partners there, I worked with them to transition out. It was good for all of us. They were kind of changing their direction, and I was kind of growing, right? A lot of them were retiring, so they kind of helped me transition out, and we maintained a really good, strong relationship. But when I started the firm in 2008, I had a couple goals. One is that I wanted to niche down and work with business owners on the strategy and planning and development and growth side of things, kind of what people traditionally call like the transactional side. I don't like to use that word transactional. I'll tell you in a minute why, but traditionally that's what kind of people call it, right? You're either doing litigation or you're doing transactional work when it comes to law. That's on the surface. That's how we kind of bifurcate the practices. So, and then meaning I didn't want to do litigation, right? It just wasn't good for my family's, the goals. I lost a lot of control over my schedule, and things like that wasn't conducive to what we were trying to accomplish as a family. And so, and then from there, also doing estate planning. So that's what I do, right? I work with business owners, and families. I'll do estate planning. I do many estate plans for families who don't own businesses, for retired couples. That's kind of like the common estate planning client you think about, right? The retired couple, because they're thinking about it, right? They're thinking about my years are numbered. So they're kind of they're easy to convince they need to come in and do the work. But my practice, I focus more on educating and families who are in the 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe early 60s, and the importance of planning. Like I said, most of them I'm targeting through my marketing and networking efforts are business owners. So they are in those age groups, right? They still have kids at home in most cases, or they're just leaving home. But some of them have really small families. They're just growing. And so helping them understand, we need to make sure business is successful, but we really need to make sure that your family is also provided for, and that we have this planning in place to help them do that. So that's what we do, right? So a family comes to me with estate planning needs, wanting to get, maybe do some kids protection planning or trust planning, avoid, probate avoidance, kind of some of the traditional things that most people think about when they decide to take the step to call an attorney for estate planning. If they own a business, then we need to start talking about how to deal with that business and make sure it's aligned with estate planning. Because depending on what I've learned, having been deep in the business world, is depending on tax status, depending on goals, we need to make sure we're providing for the estate planning in the proper way. There's, for instance, just a quick example of that is like with S corporations, right? An S corporation can only have certain kind of owners, and certain trusts, revocable family trusts, depending how they're set up and depending how the incapacity situations being dealt with or the death situations being dealt with, you could really mess up that S corp status and cause some problems if we don't deal with it correctly. So that's kind of, hopefully that gets to that point as far as what do I do. I mentioned how transactionally I don't like calling myself a transactional attorney, mainly because really I'm fighting to put the counselor and advisor back into the attorney's role. I feel over the last 20 years that we've really commoditized ourselves as business attorneys. I think it might be trying to compete with LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer or something where, hey, I'm just a pile of documents. You need a contract, come to me, I'll draft it. Here it is, bye, right? Where I tell people, like, look, documents are free. You're right. What you hire me for is the strategy, the advice and the counsel, and really, putting the planning in place, and then, deciding on some outcomes, and then moving towards those outcomes that have pushed their business the right way. Not just, and then the contracts and business entity structures those are the tools we put in place to execute the plan, right?
Yeah, I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you said something. I'll probably butcher the numbers, but you said something to the effect of, over 99% of all business owners agree you need to have some kind of a transition plan in place. But then you said there's a really small percentage of owners that actually do.
Yeah.
Why is that? What gets in their way? Are they just not aware? They want to do it. Are they just too busy? Don't get around to it, or what's the deal?
So what I have found in my practice and the business owners I've interacted with is most business owners, when it comes to their business, they're mostly focused on the revenue and increasing revenue. And a lot of them, especially, in the smaller or mid-market, lower mid-market levels, their main goal is, hey, let's make sure we are, where's the next client coming from, right? That's what's top of their mind.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about down the road because they feel like they're still trying to get somewhere with their business. I think in a lot of ways. So they're like, I will do this contingency planning, but I need to have X amount of, I need to feel more comfortable and confident in my business before I feel like I need to do that. Where I have found that the reverse is true, that if you do this planning and do this contingency planning, put the right entity structures in place, do basic business strategy and, foundational planning, that you're taking your business more seriously, and you'll see others take your business more seriously, and you'll see a bump in revenue even just by taking these steps in planning.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier, Todd, that your business is an asset, right? And we, Landon and I, in our practice, are constantly working with business owners to see it as an asset. We typically use the terminology investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's both, right? And investment is an asset, but so many business owners, like you said, especially in that lower to lower middle market, they're focused so much on growing revenue, decreasing taxes, lowering expenses, increasing profit, those sorts of things that are important, but they're really in that providing themselves a job phase and not viewing it as it is, meaning that it's an asset or an investment that you're ultimately hoping to sell at some point, right? And you've got to protect that asset, and you've got to make sure that it's structured appropriately for that transition. And to your point, having it ready and structured appropriately for transition well ahead of that actual transition happening helps to put you in the right frame of mind to grow your business the right way. But it also, if it does come about earlier than expected, you've got, an unanticipated opportunity to sell your business, and they come in and see you either don't have the documents prepared or you just barely prepared them after having a business for 20 years, then all of a sudden they wonder what else they need to dig in on and see and double check the financials and double check this. And, is this business really structured professionally? It just creates some potential red flags for outside acquirers.
Yes, exactly. That's the exact experience I've had with business owners. As far as when I first meet a business owner and meet with them for the first time, they usually call me for a document, right? They usually, hey, I need an NDA because I'm dealing with this new manufacturer, or I need, I'm hiring this person to build out my website. Can you look over this contract? Or I'm leasing this office space, can you do a lease review? I'm like, yes, I can. But what we're going to do is we're going to sit down and we're going to work together in what I call a LIFT strategy session, right? LIFT stands for legal, insurance, finance, and tax, right? And so I send them some homework. They do some homework. They get it back to me, so I'm a little educated on their business, kind of where they're at in these different little, foundational areas. I set aside 2 hours, and we're kind of digging in and seeing where they're at in the context of this new thing they're coming to me with, right? This new, why are you leasing this new space? Why are you engaging with this new manufacturer? And then we talk through all that and help them through that strategy session. We really kind of flesh out where they're going, help them see some things, see some holes in those foundations, right? Obviously, I'm not doing financial planning. I'm not doing tax advising. I'm not selling them insurance, right? But I need to know where they're at in those different foundations so that I can help them fill those gaps and introduce them to strategic partners who can help them in those areas and kind of coach the business owner on how to find the right strategic partner for that area. Because, depending on their needs and their size, different CPAs will be better than others. And some insurance advisors are advisors, some are just order takers. So we just need to make sure that we've connected them to the right people. So that they're kind of filling in those gaps. And then when we create this NDA or this lease or whatever else we decide at that meeting needs to be done to get them to the next step in their business, those documents are not just legally sound like they would have been had I just met with them for a half hour and drafted this document and given it to them, but it's also geared towards pushing them forward, right, and to the next step in that business, and really helping them to feel confident, right? My goal is to help business owners feel confident that the foundation of their business is there to support them, because most business owners realize that business requires risk, right? As you said, it's an investment, right? Investment shows growth, but also there's some risk involved, and that's why there's a reward. That's why it's an investment. That's why you gain by owning a business, is because as you overcome those risks, you're also reaping the rewards. And as you grow and scale, you're introducing additional risks. You're hiring employees. You're starting to outsource different things and such. So you're introducing those other risks. You want to make sure that they feel confident that they don't just know how to do their work and provide great service, but they're building upon that strong foundation that if something does happen, they're ready for it, right? That contingency planning. This morning, I recorded a session about contingency planning versus succession planning. I think you got at that a little bit there, Austin, where, your contingency planning is what happens on the unintentional exit, right? On the death, divorce, disability issue. That's where your estate planning really steps in. It's a big piece of that contingency planning. Your buy-sell agreements with your partners are a really big part of that. But then the succession plan is that intentional sell, like you're saying, like let's get ready so that if you do have that opportunity to sell comes up, you're not in that position where you just described, Austin, that you have good foundations and processes in place within the business, that it becomes a very attractive thing for a buyer.
So Austin talked a little bit about, the value of the business and somebody coming to acquire you and not seeing that you haven't addressed these things in 20 years and whatnot. That's one issue that pops up. But let's get real. What are some of the problems that people could run into if they haven't done this estate planning? They haven't done this contingency planning. If it's not in place and something tragic happens, what are the outcomes?
Okay. So here's an example I'm helping someone through right now. It's not, it's a simple issue, but you can already see how difficult it can be, right? A young, now widow, a wife. She has a kid at home still, and her husband passed away from COVID. And so he owned a business, and that business had some, it was a service-based business, so there weren't a lot of assets. There wasn't like a fleet of vehicles or anything in there, right? Which can cause other issues. But it had a trust account with some some funds that belonged to clients that she needed to get back to clients. It had a little bit of debt it needed to take care of, and it needed to be wrapped up, right? Well, he was a sole owner of it. Was set up as an LLC, and he was a sole member. No one had authority to step in and run and dissolve that company, right? There was no planning in place to give her authority to do that. So we had to go through and figure out what the best way of getting her membership within the LLC, so that she can go ahead and get that money back to the clients, get the debt taken care of, and then kind of resolve everything, right? So that's just some added expense and some added time and stress because of the unknown. Sure, it's been a simple thing. It hasn't required a lot of work, but it's still been a lot of stress for her and a lot of confusion, and just worry about, someone's owed money, and all these people have, thousands of dollars sitting in this trust account. They're going to want that money back, and she's feeling that pressure to get that done. So that's something that was put on her that didn't necessarily have to be put on her. And it could have been done smoother, right? You can't really stop the bad things from happening, but what our goal is to make it, to create the best case scenario, right, for these situations when it happens. Another thing that can happen that I've seen happen before is when there's not proper planning in place, either a business or even real estate. Work with real estate investors, right? They need to be dealing with their investments as business investments. But different things that can happen there is if you own a home and you pass away and you don't have certain planning in place, well, there's going to be some delays before anybody can access your money to be able to pay your mortgage, to keep the house running, right? I've seen, a daughter called me up once and was stressing out because she didn't have the money to pay the mortgage, and the lender was threatening to foreclose, was going to foreclose on the property because she couldn't pay her dad's mortgage because she couldn't afford it, and she couldn't get to her dad's money yet because she was going through the court process to get access to the money. So different things like that, and in the business sense, another one that we worry about is when you have partners, what's the relationship with a partner's spouse if one of the partners passes away? What's going to happen then? One thing, most of the time, the spouse doesn't want to be a partner in the business, right?
Well,
and the partner doesn't
I'm
want.
in that situation right now, and my brother and I are partners with another partner, and we all said, "Hey, if you go, I don't want to deal with your wife. We want to buy you out. We want to be done with that, right?"
Yep.
But yeah, if that's not planned for, you kind of become partners by default, don't you?
Yeah, a lot of times you can, and it can just, or they can be a partner without any management rights, but only financial and economic rights. So you're paying dividends out or distributions out to the spouse, and they can't do anything. They can't help manage the company because they didn't have management rights, and now she's, if it's a wife who was the deceased partner's wife is now engaged, she's she doesn't have any authority to change the situation, so she's kind of relying on the partner. So there's different ways to deal with that. Like I said, your spouse and your kids view your business, as Austin said, as an investment, and when you go, they would much rather have the money out of that investment than the business itself. So
so I'll give you the perfect example here. So, this is kind of the key to what you were talking about earlier, where, the documents are free, right? I mean, the documents are the documents. They're going to say what they're going to say. And quite honestly, Rocket Lawyer, LegalZoom, all these, and you may even use a different version of it, but all lawyers use templates, right? And you adjust those templates to fit the actual situation. But having the documents in place, even if they're very well drafted, is not the end of the scenario, right? And so talking about a buy-sell agreement, Gary's talking about not wanting to be in business with his brother's spouse or, any other partner's spouse. But I've got an example where I had a client. We talked about their buy-sell agreement and saying, you just had one partner leave, you bought out that partner, you redrafted the buy-sell agreement, Now we need to make sure that we fund that buy-sell agreement, right? Because that's the difference, right? Having a document is great, but if you don't fund that agreement, you don't accomplish anything, right? Well, the response that I got was, yes, I know we need to do that, but let us get through this transition. Let's start to look at numbers for life insurance for the death portion of the buy-sell agreement and disability insurance for the disability portion of the buy-sell agreement, right? So we just start to look into those, and lo and behold, his partner at age 45, massive heart attack and gone, like that, right? So the life insurance isn't in place, neither is disability. And so there's no money to turn to pay out the spouse at that point. She has no desire to be involved in the business, has no expertise to be involved in the business. And so here's the double whammy of what happens. He has to set up an agreement with the spouse, who's represented by her attorney, of course, and it's amicable. They have a good relationship, but she's represented by her attorney, who says, here's what the payout's going to look like, which he has to now take care of with after-tax dollars, right, to buy her out, right? And that's structured over 5 years. And then to protect her, because she had a good attorney representing her, he had to have life insurance and disability insurance on himself to cover those payments in case something happens to him before she's paid out. So if it had been done appropriately and funded appropriately from the get-go, those would have happened. It would have triggered the death benefit on the life insurance. She would have been paid out, tax-free money received on her side, no problem with the finances for the business on his side. And he would have been able to go out and hire somebody to replace his partners to do the things that his partner did, rather than needing that money on an after-tax basis every single year to buy out the spouse.
Exactly.
So it just turns into a big mess. You got to have the documents drafted appropriately, but the advice on your side and on Landon and I's side and Gary's, I mean, honestly, we're all in the advice business, right? We get pigeonholed into, for us, it's products. For you, it's the documents, right? Maybe for Gary, it's the training, right? Like the PowerPoints or whatever it is, that you guys are providing to the company. And they see, that's where they see the value, but the value is actually what's right here in the advice that we're providing to those clients. And so I just can't, it's really hard to communicate that to the end client, but that's where the value in what all of us do is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's take a quick break. We're gonna play a quick call to action for our listeners, and then we'll come back. And I think we're gonna pivot a little bit. I've got some questions that that have come to mind for me with your background. So let's listen to that, and we'll come on back.
Hey there, Tycoons. Austin Peterson here, co-host of Tycoons of Small Biz. If you think you have what it takes to be considered a tycoon and you're wondering how you could become a featured guest, please follow and then message us at Tycoons of Small Biz on LinkedIn. We'd love to have a conversation with you to see if it is a mutually good fit, and if so, we'll get you scheduled for an interview. If you're unsure about being a guest on our podcast, but are contemplating selling your business over the next few years and you'd like to know what your business is worth, please also follow us and then message us on LinkedIn for your no obligation, informal valuation of your business. We look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for listening to the Tycoons of Small Biz podcast. And now, back to today's program.
All right, Tycoons, welcome back. Austin and Gary here with Todd Jarvis of Jarvis Legacy. We're talking all about, the estate planning documents, business planning documents, and so forth that business owners need to have in place for their business. But I want to pivot a little bit because I think we kind of glossed over this. I mean, your background in technology and bioinformatics and so forth, we've just come through this, and, I don't know that we're all the way out, but I think the fact that the mask mandate is now being dropped for airplane travel is probably an indicator that we're getting pretty close to the end of this COVID thing. But your background in genetics and bioinformatics, I think, gives you an understanding beyond what most of us have with what's gone on with the vaccine and, the way that that's kind of been put together, right? Because you got all these people who, and I'm not going to take a side regardless because it becomes so politically charged, but you got some people who, when President Trump was the president, it was I'm not going to use that vaccine. And then as soon as President Biden's the president, oh yeah, I'll use the vaccine. Biden's telling me I should get the vaccine. So it's become such a mess, but it was manufactured and built so quickly, mainly because of technology that exists today that didn't exist 20 years ago. So I'd love to have, kind of your slant on that and what, help us understand what that really means, right? Because I think of what is it? I think it's mRNA, if I'm not mistaken, that allows us to kind of build that. So I'll turn the microphone over to you, and if it's beyond what you want to discuss, great, we can move on to something else. But I just thought that it was interesting while we have you to have that discussion.
But how often do you get a genetic and DNA type of guy on the radio, right?
Exactly.
No, I think, I'll definitely respond to that and talk a little bit about this. Again, kind of like you're saying, it's just kind of, it's an interesting topic that I don't get discussed a lot because it, like you're saying, it does get kind of politically charged right away, and people start worrying about it, and just just really polarized a lot of us, right? But yeah, it has been really interesting to watch, and I mean, a couple of those things, we. When it comes to development and such, I mean, just leaps and bounds. I can remember back from when I was in school, and we were just starting to, the goal was the $1,000 genome, and so basically being able to sequence someone's genome for only $1,000, right, was kind of the benchmark we were trying to get to, and it's just like any technology, it's just going crazy and advancing so fast, but yet all it does is expose to us how much we really don't understand, I think, a lot of times. And that's kind of one thing I learned too as I was going through the training and keep going through the training is it just more just the more questions you have, and how much more you might understand that we don't understand. But with that, I think with the vaccine, it's been really interesting. I think we learned a lot of things going through that. One thing that's interesting is, yeah, it was done really quickly. The development of the vaccine was done quickly. I think for me, one of my kind of opinions is one of the things that happened so quickly or allowed it to happen so quickly is because we shortcut or lifted a lot of the regulatory processes involved. So yes, the science has gotten faster and it's gotten better, and were there some risks taken? That's up for debate, right? With getting it to market as fast. And I think personally, I would have personally liked it to see, it would have been nice if we had had more time. But hey, I did get vaccinated in full disclosure. I did get one of the vaccines. So I had enough trust in it to do that. But I think a lot of what happened so fast is, one, technology is helping us, right? We're getting there faster. We're understanding genetics faster because, the whole point and the whole reason bioinformatics exists as an industry and as a discipline is because we kind of got to a point to where we couldn't do anything faster or better or actually do what we needed to do in the wet lab anymore, right? We needed to model these things. We needed computers to speed through the computations and to do all this, predictions and showing us these things because we just couldn't do it at the level we needed to fast enough. So I think, a lot of that has helped us get there. But I think when it comes down to it, lifting the processes for which approval is done, I think that had a lot to do with how we got it to market so fast. I think science happens faster than we realize. From my experience and working with some pharmaceutical companies and kind of watching the literature, the science happens relatively fast in a lot of cases, as it did in the vaccines. But a lot of what slows it down is the regulation, which was by and large lifted during this vaccine thing. So yeah, there wasn't as much testing, as you could say, but also there wasn't as much just having as many people review the papers and review the data, and a lot of what has frustrated a lot of people in the biologics industry at all and in general, maybe some of them I've talked to feel like, hey, this is how it should go every time, right? So I don't know if that really gets to what you're saying, but without trying to get too opinionated about it. But yeah, I think I think it'll be interesting to watch to see if the regulatory industry learned anything from how quickly we got it through, to see if there's any way we can speed up those processes, because a lot of times they really kind of aren't needed, but a lot of times they are. I mean, it's really hard when you're dealing with humans, right? With the ethics is a really difficult and thin line to walk, as far as, you know, we want every drug and everything we're putting into our bodies to be perfect and not cause any harm, but how much are we willing to risk not having any therapies for that ultimate goal, which might be impossible to meet.
So let's pull you back to your current focus, family law. Let's go back there for a second.
Okay.
And family, dealing with family businesses is interesting. We do it from a sales and grow your business and top line and everything else. And I got to tell you, dealing with a business is interesting enough as it is, but then you throw the family dynamic on top of it, and we can all sit in a room together and all agree on something, but then we walk out and you go talk to your dad and you talk to your mom, and then they don't agree. And I mean, it's just messy, sometimes. And family businesses are very unique. What sort of issues are unique to families as it pertains to the work that you do?
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of times it comes down to, like you're saying, when I meet with a family for the estate planning side, and I actually do ask. I told you about that homework I give to business owners, and when I meet them, I ask them about whether they've got their estate planning done, how much they've got done, because I want to know a little bit, and we dive a little bit into their family dynamics, because I think it's so much part of their goals and trajectory in their business and life. So yeah, dealing with the most common issues that I run across that become difficult situations are where you have families where some siblings or some children are involved in the business and some aren't, and how to deal with that fairly, right? How do you deal with the fact that it's mom and dad's business, and when they're out of the picture, we all should be treated equally, versus, hey, I've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in growing this business to where it is. So I need some compensation for that. That's where it gets, I see the biggest issues, and see parents, business owners struggling to deal with that, because they all care and they all want to do what's right. I haven't run into one that was like, oh, well, whatever, just do this. They all really want to do right by their kids. And really, to be honest, the best way to deal with that is through communication. Just like with any of these things, I drive this home to families. Like, the best way to make sure this plan that we're putting in place right now, make sure that this works, is communication. Okay? Sometimes mom and dad want to just take the documents home and shove them on the shelf and tell their oldest kid, hey, when you need it, it's over here in the gun safe, right? But no, it's kind of going back to what we've all been saying, as far as planning is outside of the documents, right? The documents are the guidance, and they put into words the plan, but the planning and the plan is the execution, right? Of what's those documents have tried to describe in words and to affect in words.
Well, that's where your services come in, because everybody's version of fair is different, especially with the scenario that you outlined. Sometimes we call fair the 4-letter F word, but it's everybody thinks of fair differently. But that's where, as Austin was saying earlier, that's where the talking it through, helping people think about different scenarios, helping people think about how did others handle this, and how did they think about it, and that's where an unbiased outside third party can be really helpful. I imagine you have a lot of those types of conversations with people.
Yes, 100%. And one thing that I definitely include as part of my services with estate planning is family meetings. I'm like, I tell every family I plan with, my goal with planning is doing on the estate planning side is to make sure their plan works, right? I mean, you've probably all seen trusts that are unfunded or aren't properly funded, and have the issues and how those are failing, right? Those are failing. Those trusts aren't doing any good if they're not properly funded. So my goal and commitment to the family is to do my best to make sure that the plan works when it's needed, not just the day that we signed it. So part of that is communication and having family meetings, pulling everybody together on Zoom because they're spread throughout the country or world, right? And having mom and dad talk through what they've been doing and me there to coordinate that and to help with that. And even during the planning process. So there's kind of different places and times when we do the family meetings. It might be, hey, mom and dad want to talk this out before we finalize kind of what they want to be putting into the plan. So we kind of talk it out and get everybody's thoughts and opinions, and then the parents can make final decisions. Or it's happening after the planning and they're just telling them, hey, this is what's happening, this is why, and then I'm there to field and to kind of deal with the questions and moderate that in a way that makes it conducive and for the family. And then of course, ongoing support for the family is important. A lot of times they, like I said, you just kind of sign documents and it's kind of like bye, right? I believe in, I want clients and families to call me at any time. I'm not going to bill them extra because they're telling me they're asking me, hey, I bought a new piece of property. How does this integrate with my plan? I'll guide them, direct them through that. I'm going to reach out every 3 years and at least every 3 years and do full reviews with them and sit down with them and make sure what they have in place is in place, and print out their power of attorneys. Power of attorneys, especially financial power of attorneys, banks get a little leery of honoring those if they're more than a couple years old, because they're like, how do I know there's not a new one out there, right? So we reprint those, they sign them, and we kind of revisit things and keep moving forward. So
interesting. Yeah, the big takeaway that I'm taking from a lot of this is when people think about their business plan, and then over here you might think about your estate planning or whatnot, but that they're integrated. I mean, those two things should go hand in hand. How do you help people mesh those two?
By asking the right questions and helping them, that's kind of how I drive most of my meetings, is just being curious with people.
Yeah.
And asking questions like, what about this? What happened? What are we going to deal with if this happens? Or what are your thoughts on this situation? And that kind of helps them, decide and on what outcome they want. Like I was going to say, I really try to focus on the outcome and the experience that everybody involved is going to be dealing with. Everybody involved in the business or everybody involved in the family planning. What's this experience going to be like for them? And are you okay with that? Talk about it in context of their current plan if they've done planning before, or the state's default plan if they've never done planning. It's like, hey, this is how things are going to fall out. What are your thoughts on this? And what do you think Johnny's going to think, and how's that going to impact that in his situation? So
it's got to be an ongoing conversation too, right? I mean, the family meeting doesn't only happen once, or shouldn't just happen once. I mean, even in my own family, my wife's father, he and I had a conversation probably 3 or so years ago, and he said, "Oh no, they all know, they understand." And I said, "I'm here to tell you, they don't. They don't know how it's gonna unfold. They don't know, the way that you have it laid out. They don't understand what your wishes are. Trust me, they don't understand." Well, I had the conversation with them a few years ago. I think you had it in passing, but I'm telling you that in conversations that I hear, they don't understand what your wishes are. You just communicated to me what you wanted to happen, and I know that, but I'm telling you, they don't know it, and it's up to you to share that information with them in a family meeting. And so we did. We had that family meeting, and he laid it out to everybody, and he handed kind of everybody an envelope with some information in it. And so, that kind of helps to move that along, but it's not a one-time thing. And, to address your comment earlier, Gary, fair and equal are not the same thing, right? And so sometimes when there is a member of the family that's inside of the business and has been for 20 something years, and then other siblings that haven't been a part of that business, that doesn't mean that it should be exactly equal, right? And I don't know if Todd uses this terminology in his business or if it's just something that we use in our business, but we refer to estate equalization specifically in terms of business interests as opposed to outside net worth and trying to make it equal, but it's a misnomer because it should be to make it fair, right? And fair is only derived by having a conversation with the matriarch and the patriarch of the family, for example, or matriarchs and patriarchs, to have that conversation as to what are your wishes, what do you want to have happen, and then figuring out a plan. After that plan has been figured out, then communicating it to the members of the family so that they understand what your frame of mind was and how you came up with that plan, rather than, well, that's what the attorney told us to do, so that's what we drafted, and now they're gone and they, can't do anything about it, and the kids are left to fight about, what happened, and that's not fair. Why do you get that? And we did, you worked inside the business, but I did this for mom and dad. I cared for them, or whatever. So it truly is about communicating the plan and then updating the plan on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, and including all of the advisors, right? Because I have a perspective, but I don't have the full perspective because no one person, right? We needed a CPA's advice, tax counsel. We need Austin and Gary, and we need everybody feeding in and giving guidance on what makes sense. This is in the family understanding how they're communicating and what they're trying to accomplish, and the team getting together and communicating with each other, not just telling the couple to go, hey, go tell your accountant X, Y, and Z and ask them this question. Like, no, let's get on the phone. Let's all talk. Let's get this figured out. Accomplish something.
Yep. No, in our practice, Landon and I refer to that as, getting together with all the advisors to make sure that there aren't any coordination gaps, right? Because we've got to coordinate. You've got your legal perspective, right? The CPA's got their tax perspective. I may have my own perspective on whatever, estate transfer or the investments and the way that they should transfer and all those sorts of things. But if there's one person, and I'm not saying it has to be this way, but typically in our practice, it's us who are the quarterback of that team. We're help guiding all of that. And we're asking for the legal perspective and the tax perspective and the insurance perspective and whatever, whoever else is in the room, to make sure that we're all rowing the same direction. Because, just think of it from an income tax perspective. Every single year, a CPA wants to save every business owner every dollar that they can save, right? But when it comes time to sell that business, was that the best decision? Right? You may look like you're making way less money in the business than you actually are. And because you saved so much in taxes every single year, the value of your business is now less. Right? And so you've got to have all perspectives on the table, not just one advisor's perspective.
Yeah, it was interesting. I had one of my business owners come to me after last tax season, and he's like, I'm in trouble. He's like, my accountant just did my taxes and he put me as showing as a loss. I mean, they made a ton of money, right? But the way they did accounting, he showed a loss. Like, I can't show a loss. He's an independent mortgage broker. He's like, my license is on the line if I'm showing losses, I need to make sure things are good to go. So yeah, I think that conversation is important.
Yeah. Well, we're pushing up against time here. I don't know, Gary, if you've got anything else you want to add, or Todd, if there's anything specific you want to add at the end of our time here.
I'll just say it's been a great educational conversation, learning about all the potential pitfalls out there. So I appreciate spending some time with you, Todd.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully my ramblings have been helpful for someone. And but no, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you. I think I've said about everything that I was hoping to say. So thank you.
Well, just tell our listeners where they can track you down, whether it's on LinkedIn or your website, or you want to leave your phone number, or whatever you'd like to add there.
Yeah, so they can reach out to me. My phone number is 520-333-5123. And then LinkedIn, Todd Jarvis, and Facebook, Todd Jarvis. Just look for me, or Jarvis Legacy, and you'll find me. I'm active on most social media platforms. So yeah, let's connect.
Yeah, really appreciate the time, Todd. The message today, obviously, for our listeners is estate planning is important for every business owner, period. And it should be done earlier than later and reviewed on an ongoing basis. So I think that's truly the message that we got across today. And I appreciate you being here to share that message with our listeners.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, proudly hosted by Austin Peterson and Landon Mance. Austin and Landon are comprehensive financial planning professionals specializing in financial, estate, and succession planning for small business owners. Austin and Landon have offices in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and represent clients in 14 states throughout the country. Join Austin, Landon, and the featured Tycoons live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. right here on Business Radio X and your favorite podcast platform.